way we live our lives speaks volumes to God and to the world around us. You know, the way we live, our words and our actions, they tell if we are living for the glory of God or for our own glory. And today we're going to continue on in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 20 through chapter 3, verse 5. And it's the continuation of the prophecy of God to the people of Israel. And this prophecy points to the waywardness of the people of Israel and the results from that way of life. And I want to jump right in today. You know, there's a few actions that we can take so as not to fall into the same troubles that the Israelites faced. One of the actions we can do is just to be conscious of our faults. We all have faults. And just to be aware of those things that maybe turn us away from God or trap us in being not committed to God the way we should be. You know, this prophecy starts off, he says, long ago you broke off your yoke and tore off your bonds. You said, I will not serve you. You know, they made that deliberate choice to not serve the Lord. And in this portion of the prophecy, he gives images of what their faults were like, what he compared them to. And one was to like a prostitute. You know, a prostitute is one who is waiting for someone to come and meet their needs. And he's saying, Israel, you are like a prostitute. You're waiting around for any God to come into your life to meet your needs. And he says, indeed, on every high hill and under every spreading tree, you lay down as a prostitute. I had planted you like a choice vine of sound and reliable stock. How then did you turn against me into a corrupt wild vine? Although you wash yourself with soap and use an abundance of cleansing powder, the stain of your guilt is still before me. How can you say, I'm not defiled? I have not run after the Baals. See how you have behaved in the valley. Consider what you have done. You know, many of the pagan and Canaanite idols in that time, they were essentially sex cults. You know, there was ritual prostitution, and their worship was connected with sexual immorality. And he's saying, you turned against me. You turned away from me. And although you wash yourself, there's still the guilt that is there. The guilt is still before me. You have turned against me. Even though you try to do the right things, you're still basically a prostitute. You're willing to allow any other gods to come in and take part in your life. And we need to be aware of that as well. You know, what are those things that are you know, keeping us away from that relationship with God that he truly wants? You know, what are those gods that we are serving? You know, the big ones are money. That's one of the biggest ones. You know, we serve that money, the jobs that we have or the sales that we make, and we're trying to make that extra buck. And a lot of times that can be a god. And we're allowing that to creep into our lives. And no matter how much we try to do the right thing, that guilt is still before us. And he says, how can you say, I am not defiled? I have not run after the Baals. I haven't gone after any other gods. You know, we just need to be conscious of the fact we do have faults. All of us do. There are things that we enjoy to do. There are things that we enjoy having. There are little gods out there that we worship. We just need to be aware of that and to turn that over to God. And not only does he say it's like you were like a prostitute, he also says you're like a wild animal, basically in hot pursuit of other gods. He says you're a swift she-camel running here and there, a wild donkey accustomed to the desert, sniffing the wind in her craving. In her heat, who can restrain her? Any males that pursue her need not tire themselves. At mating time they will find her. Do not run until your feet are bare and your throat is dry, but you said, it's no use, I love foreign gods, and I must go after them. And he calls them, he basically says, you're like a wild animal that's in heat. And that these gods, they don't even have to come and find you, because you are so in love with the foreign gods that you chase after them. You're like an animal in heat that's looking for its mate. And instead of staying with me, you're chasing after these gods that can do nothing for you. And just that idea that, are we pursuing those other gods? You know, our God is the God of all creation. He is in complete control of all things, no matter what's going on in our personal lives, in our community, state, nation, world. He's in control. And we don't need to be pursuing other gods. And a lot of times we are in hot pursuit of other gods, whether it be a political party or things or celebrities or whatever. And he says, don't be like that wild animal in heat looking for a mate. I am your mate. I am the God of all creation. I created you and I love you and I'm going to care for you. So not just a prostitute and a wild animal. He says you're like a thief. And what is a thief? You know, he's basically saying you serve other gods, but then you're ashamed when you get caught. You're serving other gods thinking, I don't know about it. But when you're caught, you are ashamed. He says, as a thief is disgraced when he is caught, so the people of Israel are disgraced. They, their kings and their officials, their priests and their prophets. You know, what are those things that we serve in our lives? What are those little gods in our lives that we think God maybe doesn't know about? Or maybe what are those things that we do or the things that we serve that we would be ashamed if God called us out on it? And let's move it down the chain. What are those things that you would be ashamed if your friends and family called you out on it? You know, those might be those little gods that we are serving. And he doesn't want us to give our lives to anybody else. He wants us completely. So there was a prostitute, wild animal, a thief, and then he says later in this passage, he talks about a divorced wife coming back to her first husband. And it's like, you were joined with another god, but now you're wanting to return to me? He says, it's actually in chapter 3, he says, if a man divorces his wife and she leaves him and marries another man, should he return to her again? Would not the land be completely defiled? But you have lived as a prostitute with many lovers. Would you now return to me? Look up to the barren heights and see, is there any place where you have not been ravished? By the roadside you sat waiting for lovers, sat like a nomad in the desert. You have defiled the land with your prostitution and wickedness. Therefore, the showers have been withheld, and no spring rains have fallen. Yet you have the brazen look of a prostitute. You refuse to blush with shame. You know, in law, by biblical law, you know, if a woman married a man and they got divorced and she remarried, she became an adulteress. And I mean, it's just, and they're not supposed to come back to their first husband. But it's that image of you chose to go to another god. You know, look at the big picture, not just husband and wife. You chose to go serve another god, and now you want to come back to me? You've defiled the land. You are defiled. Why would I want you back? But to that, we can say thanks be to God for his grace and mercy. You know, through Jesus Christ, we can return to our first love, who is Jesus Christ, who is the Lord. You know, we have our faults, or we are conscious of our faults. We are like the prostitute, the wild animal, the thief, the divorced and remarried wife. And we are serving other gods, and God is looking at us and saying, why would I want you back? But he is a gracious and merciful and loving God. And through Jesus Christ, we can come back to him. We can return to him if we have fallen away from him. And so if we or others that we know are caught up in the troubles of life because of the life they are choosing to live, there's still hope. They can come back to God through Jesus Christ. It doesn't matter what the sin is and what the gods are that they have served. He says, come back to me. I want you as my own. I am gracious and merciful. All you have to do is come back. Along with being conscious of our faults, we are also to be cautious with our freedoms. He says, in vain I punish your people. They did not respond to correction. Your sword has devoured your prophets like a ravenous lion. You of this generation, consider the word of the Lord. Have I been a desert to Israel or a land of great darkness? Why do my people say, we are free to roam? We will come to you no more. Does a young woman forget her jewelry? A bride her wedding ornaments? Yet my people have forgotten me days without number. How skilled you are at pursuing love. Even the worst of women can learn from your ways. On your clothes is found the lifeblood of the innocent poor, though you did not catch them breaking in. Yet in spite of all this, you say, I am innocent. He is not angry with me, but I will pass judgment on you because you say, I have not sinned. Why do you go about so much, changing your ways? You will be disappointed by Egypt as you were by Assyria. You will also leave that place with your hands on your head, for the Lord has rejected those you trust. You will not be helped by them. He says, you've rebelled against me. In that freedom that you have rebelled against me. You did not respond to the correction that I gave you, and when you were starting to veer from my directions for you, and the freedom that I gave to you, I corrected you, but you did not respond to that correction. And to help you, or to that correction that I was sending, came through the prophets. And I sent you prophet after prophet, and yet you destroyed them, many by the sword, because you didn't want to hear the correction that I was bringing to you. And you said, we are free to roam, and we will come to you no more. They forgot about the benefits of the Lord. He says, does a young woman forget her jewelry, or a bride forget her wedding ornaments? What are the things of God that he has done for us? Think of the things that he did for Israel. How he carried them through from Egypt, through the wilderness, and into the promised land, and overtaking that land, taking control of it. And God was with them every step of the way. And yet they forgot. They forgot the beauty of the Lord. They forgot the blessings that God had gave to them. And he says, you pursued different kinds of love. And you had the freedom to do so, but you're to love me, but you pursued different kinds of love. You know how to love. And instead of loving me, you chose things and people and just the things of the world. And we're in that same place. We have a God that wants our love, who has done wonderful things for us, and yet we pursue other things, trying to find love on this planet. Whether it's people or money or things, and yet they would say to him, I'm innocent. I'm innocent. I haven't done anything wrong, and we do the same thing. We serve God, but we serve this thing over here. God says you can't serve both God and money, but we do all the time. And we say, I'm innocent. But he reminds them, you'll be disappointed by Egypt. You'll be disappointed by Assyria. And we talked about that last week. You want to go back to Egypt, or you want to go back to Assyria. Egypt represented the world system, success, prosperity. Assyria represented the religious life and putting down roots and just having a comfortable life. You had your business and your church and your family, and everything was right there. And he said those things are going to bring disappointment. You can pursue prosperity. You can pursue that wealth. You can pursue your business ideas. You can pursue your church. You can pursue those relationships and the roots. But all those things will disappoint. The only thing that will bring true satisfaction is a relationship with God. Because those places, and it's interesting, he says, you leave with your hands on your head. You will leave those places, Egypt and Assyria, with your hands on your head. And that can be, I think, looked at a couple different ways. Your hands are on your head because of slavery. You're taken captive by the things of the world or the things of religion and life. Or your hands on your head in frustration. You ever get frustrated with something and your hands just go to your head? Because those things disappoint. The only thing that can satisfy is God himself. Because it says, you will not be helped by the world. You will not be helped by the roots and the businesses and the synagogues. Your help comes from God. So we need to be conscious of faults and cautious with our freedoms. Jesus Christ, through Christ, we are free. We are free to live life to the fullest. But that does not give us a license to sin and do whatever we really want to do. But we have freedom in Christ because we are saved by the grace of God through Jesus Christ, who died for us. But we need to be cautious with that freedom. Conscious of our faults, cautious with our freedom, but we need to be consistent in our life when seeking God's favor. He says, they say to wood, you are my father, and to stone, you gave me birth. They have turned their backs to me and not their faces. Yet when they are in trouble, they say, come and save us. Where then are the gods you made for yourselves? Let them come, if they can save you when you are in trouble. For you, Judah, have as many gods as you have towns. Now he says they turn their backs on him, but not their faces. They still call out to him whenever they were in need. And yet they say to wood, a wood idol, you are my father. And they say to stone, you gave me birth. There's confusion in what they're choosing to serve and to worship. And it's interesting because I guess it is the female symbol that is called father and the male symbol that is called you gave me birth. It was like wood represented the female, stone represented the male, and yet they were saying, wood, you are my father. Stone, you gave me birth. So they didn't even realize what they were worshiping. They didn't realize what they were giving their lives to. And so there was confusion in the midst of their worship. But yet, when they were in trouble, they would come and say, come and save us. And he says, where are the gods that you've made for yourself? Let them come and save you. Because you have as many gods as you have towns. And so that idea that they're living one way and yet they're wanting God's favor. And he says, you can't have it both ways. You have to be consistent in your life with me. You can't be off serving other gods and then come and say, come and save us. Come and help us when you're not trusting in me to begin with. And then he goes on, he says, have you not just called to me, my father, my friend from my youth? Will you always be angry? Will your wrath continue forever? This is how you talk. But you do all the evil that you can. Same thing. They're calling out, even though they're serving other gods, other idols, man-made idols, yet they pray, my friend from my youth. Are you always going to be angry? Is your wrath going to continue forever? Why would God want to bless the people if they continued to do all the evil that they could? They weren't consistent in their life with him. and it brought troubles upon their own lives. Even though they called out to God, trouble still came because they were serving other gods, yet wanting the true God to help them. Why would God grant favor if we are choosing to go against his desire? So we need to be consistent in how we live, pursuing God, pursuing Jesus Christ, allowing Jesus to have control of our heart, soul, and mind. That we love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and we love our neighbor as ourselves. And that we are allowing Jesus Christ to express himself through us as his body each and every day. So Israel went through all these troubles because they chose to serve other gods rather than to serve God himself. And I just want to conclude with, if we want to stay clear of the troubles that the Israelites faced, it comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Period. It is through Jesus that we are cleansed from the stain of sin, the faults that we have, those shortcomings. It is through Jesus Christ that we are cleansed from that stain of sin and we are reconciled to God. It is only through Jesus that we find complete freedom in this life. It's in Christ. We have complete freedom to live for him in whatever he chooses to ask us to do. Will we fall? Absolutely. Will we sin? Yes. But we have freedom because Jesus is in us, helping us and changing us from the inside out. It's through Jesus that we can find favor with God as we live for him and pursue him with our entire being. His favor will be poured out upon us. And then ultimately, we will be able to live for the glory of God through everything that we do and say, because our focus is upon him through Christ and not on the other gods and the other things that are trying to take our attention away from God. Let's pursue God through Jesus Christ. Let us live for the glory of God and bless him through the life that we live for him. God bless. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.